What is up, you spooky bitches? We are back and we have another episode of the Hello Sidney podcast here, a podcast for horror lovers where we discuss any and all things horror. And it's me, your girl, Sidney. Happy Friday. Happy final episode of Stephen King month, guys. I have had a blast doing this. I actually can't wait to do another one because there are still so many great movies that we need to cover that are Stephen King adaptations. And today we are ending with one that actually was originally a Bachman novel, which I actually don't know if I've explained this throughout this month. I simply can't remember, but Stephen King started writing under a pseudonym back in the 70s, which his pseudonym was Richard Bachman. Eventually it was found out, so now all of his books have, Stephen King writing as Richard Bachman. But The Long Walk is a Richard Bachman book. Rage is a Richard Bachman book. The Running Man is a Richard Bachman book, and as is Thinner. So today we're talking about Thinner, which the novel was published in 1984, and the film adaptation was done about 12 years later. So in 1996, we got the film adaptation of Thinner. Is it a great adaptation? I'm not going to say it's in top 10. I'm not going to say it's one of the best. This is one where I read the book and it horrified me on such a deep level. And then I saw the movie and I was like, oh, this could have been done a lot better, honestly. There's just something about the book that is genuinely so devastating. Like, if you follow me on Instagram, I recently posted one of my old TikToks where it's like, just when you think you can't be shocked by anything, you read the end of Thinner. And it's like, what the fuck? Like, it just hits so differently. And like, the ending of the movie is not too different, but it's just, I don't know. It just hits a lot harder the way that it's written in the book. But without further ado, we're going to get into today's episode, and then I'm going to give you can I speak today? I'm going to give you guys the lineup for October because that is going to be Halloween month, and I just put that schedule together. It's crazy saying this because I'm filming this on September 15th because I'm leaving on Wednesday for like 10 days to go to Austin for Fantastic Fest, so I have to get everything in order. But by the time I get back, it's basically going to be October, guys. So I'll give you guys the lineup at the end and all that. But without further ado, let's jump into this film. So Thinner, again, came out in 1996. It's about an hour and 33 minutes long. It has a 5.8 on IMDb, which isn't terrible, but then it has a 19% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is pretty terrible. I feel like I would put it more towards like the IMDb rating. Like, I would honestly give this movie like a 5 out of 10. Like, it's not great. Again, like, it is definitely not one of the better adaptations, and I think especially at a time where everybody is much more culturally sensitive these days, this movie does not necessarily hold up well, and you'll see why. So Thinner opens up, we see a bunch of cars driving. It's like this caravan of cars. They're all driving through this town, and it seems that they're driving towards the Fairview line. So this book I think the book also takes place in Connecticut. This movie takes place in Fairview, Connecticut, which usually all Stephen King books take place in either like Colorado or mostly Maine. This one is going to involve Maine because he follows them up the eastern coast, like to Maine. They end up in Maine, but they start in Connecticut. And we cut to our main character, whose name is going to be Billy Halleck. And he's an obese man. He's a very large man. And he is played by Robert John Burke, who I personally best know as Bart Bass from Gossip Girl. He's also in The Last of Us. He's been in a lot of stuff. Like, he's a very well-known actor, but he plays Billy Halleck in this movie, and it is just very obvious that he's wearing a fat suit. Like, it doesn't blend well. Like, you look at this guy and you're like, oh, that's like a pretty in shape dude just wearing a fat suit. So like, maybe that's what contributes to like the poor ratings that this movie gets, because you're immediately just not convinced. Like, you don't necessarily feel like you're looking at an actually obese man who's struggling with his weight. But I don't know. But we see Billy, and he's looking out at this line of cars that's driving by. And this is the time that I'm going to say this word, because he looks out and he says, gypsy caravan. So, and this is what I meant by like the whole culturally sensitive thing, because gypsy is considered to be an offensive term. So I'm not going to use that word throughout this episode, except for a couple times where it's like physically written down and I'm going to recite what it says. But I'm just going to refer to them as the Romani people. So again, this was the 90s. We were not nearly as culturally sensitive as we are now. I'm going to use a different word, but they use that word throughout the entire movie. So Billy continues on and he stops in the bathroom and he looks down at the scale and it looks like he's like scared to step on the scale. Obviously this guy struggles with his weight and he like is trying to take everything out of his pockets. He takes his watch off, he takes his wallet out of his pocket and he steps on the scale and he is near 300 pounds. It's like 297 or something. And he ends up going down into the kitchen where he runs into his wife Heidi and she gives him a smoothie, which is like all healthy stuff. And she asks him for his weight and she logs it and they talk about his diet. So this is obviously something that like they're all focusing on. And then their young daughter Linda comes in. Linda's like a teenager and they all sit down for breakfast and they joke about how Billy is going to work today to get this mafia client off for this murder charge. And Billy's like, listen, like if I thought he did it, I wouldn't be representing him. But we know that Billy's a lawyer at this point. And he even says to the girls, he's like, I am absolutely convinced of Janelle's innocence or else I wouldn't be doing this. So we then cut to him going to court and he calls this witness to the stand and Janelle is confused by the fact that he's calling this witness to the stand, but then it works in his favor. Like this guy ends up admitting like his wife tried to put a hit on him or something. So however it does it, it gets Janelle off. Like Janelle, he's acquitted of this possible murder charge. So we cut to him and Billy celebrating on this boat. This guy obviously is like this rich dude. He's on this nice ass boat and they're celebrating that he got him acquitted. And Janelle is like, I really owe you one for this. Like, so whenever you need something, just let me know. So we cut to Billy in town and he's given a flyer by this woman. And when he looks at the flyer, it says Gypsy Fair. So it's all these Romani people that came in the caravan and they're all in town. They're having this fair. All the kids are involved. They're like shooting arrows. It actually looks like a fucking blast, to be honest. And we see this woman, Gina, who is this beautiful, beautiful woman. And she's very clearly the center of attention. Like everybody's paying attention to her. Like even Billy is looking at her. And Billy ends up going inside to his office and he climbs the stairs up to his office and he is very badly out of breath to the point where even one of his coworkers is like, damn, like you got to lose some weight, Billy. Like you are not doing well. And eventually that same coworker takes him to the window and they look outside and the coworker points out Gina and he tells Billy like, oh, you should go give her a quarter and ask her if she can lift her skirt for you. Like they just are very like, or more so the coworker is like sexualizing her, making these comments. And suddenly she looks up at them like she heard them. And eventually we cut to Billy back outside and the judge comes up to him. I forget the judge's name, so I'm just going to refer to him as the judge, honestly. And he works with Billy because, again, Billy's a lawyer. And the judge comes up to him and he's like, oh, these goddamn, like, slur word for the Romani people, and he's like all mad about them and just saying bad things about them, how they bring disease and crime, and he has a cop out there trying to kick them out. And Billy actually disagrees. He's like, no, like they're just bringing some fun, like it's just fine. And they see this old guy and the judge points out how I learned that that's their chief. His name is Lemke. So Billy starts walking to his car when Gina comes up to him, that same woman from earlier, and she reaches in her bra and she kind of like starts taunting him, like she's dancing. It looks like she's trying to seduce him, but then she pulls a quarter out of her bra and she lifts up her skirt and dances and then flips him off and spits in his direction. So like when she had looked up earlier, like she heard them, it's because she did hear them because she knew exactly what they were saying. Like, oh, see if you can give her a quarter and she'll lift her skirt. And that's exactly what she just did. So Billy kind of looks at her strange, but eventually he goes home. And that night we see him and Heidi sitting at dinner, actually are out at dinner with some of Billy's coworkers, and they're celebrating his win, and he goes to like grab dessert off a dessert tray and Heidi is like, nope, absolutely not. So dinner ends and we see Billy driving home with Heidi. So Heidi's in the passenger seat and she tells him like, you really need to stop eating. Like you are digging your own grave. I love you. And if I didn't, I would keep my mouth shut, but like, I need you to stay around. And then she kind of starts to like get on him and like kind of touch him a little bit. And she's like, maybe I can help you think about something other than food. And she starts going into his pants and she starts going down on him while he's driving. And we then cut to a pharmacy nearby and Stephen King makes a cameo here. He plays the pharmacist and that guy Lemke is in there with this old woman. And we find out that this old woman is his daughter, despite the fact that she looks like just as old as he does. And they come in and they ask to fill a prescription for Lemke's nose, and he shows his nose to the pharmacist, and he's got like this like gaping wound on it. I think it's supposed to be like skin cancer or something. I don't remember entirely if they describe it more in the book, but he's got like this gaping wound on his nose, and that's what he's there getting his prescription for. And we cut back to the car. We see like Heidi is still getting it on, doing her thing. Billy's enjoying himself. And we cut back to the pharmacy and we see Lemke's daughter, whose name is going to be Suzanne. She says she has to go outside because she's got to get something in the car. She goes to get a coat or something. And as she's crossing the street, Billy is distracted by, whatever is happening in the car. And sure enough, he keeps driving and doesn't see her, and he straight runs her over and he kills Suzanne immediately. And we see like all this blood on his windshield, and Heidi starts to scream. So we then cut to some time later, and we see Billy explain how he's getting a coroner's inquest, and Heidi assures Linda, like, he's not going to get in trouble. He's not going to go to prison. Like, he didn't do anything. It was simply just an accident. And Billy agrees. But you can tell he kind of like looks at her like he kind of holds her responsible, and that's going to be a theme throughout this, but you can already immediately tell that just by the look on his face. So we cut to the courthouse, and this is not like a case, like a trial by jury. It's a very small courtroom. So it's really just like Billy and a few other people. One of those people is the pharmacist, and he starts testifying, and he claims that the Romani people were stealing, and that's why the woman was probably running into the street. And the judge cuts him off and kind of just like lets him leave it at that, just like assuming that these people were stealing from him and that's why they were running out. And then the next person that comes up to the stand is the police chief, whose name is Hopley, and he testifies that Billy was going the speed limit and he was breathalyzed and he was sober. And the judge after that is like, well, I find no grounds for which to charge him for this death. Like, it was very clearly accidental. So Billy has no consequences for killing this woman, and he leaves the courthouse and he's with Heidi. The two of them seem very relieved, and they go to get in the car. But as Billy is getting in the car, he's approached by Lemke, who touches his face with the back of his hand like this, and he says one word, and that's thinner. And he just like stares into Billy's eyes, like deep into his soul. And eventually he gets back in his car and he drives off, scowling at Billy. And Billy's just looking at him like confused by this whole thing, but he just moves on. And eventually he gets home, and it must be like the day later or a couple days later, because he gets on the scale and he sees that he's 283 pounds. And he's like super excited about this. And he tells Heidi, and she's like, 14 pounds in 7 days. Like, that's quite a bit. And we see that he keeps eating. Like, he's not doing anything diet-wise. Like, he is eating a bunch of shit that's all around him. And Heidi mentions, like, oh, maybe it's the guilt, like, about hitting that woman. Maybe that's what's doing it. And he's like, no. So it almost seems like he doesn't feel guilty because, again, I think he's projecting the guilt onto Heidi because he blames her for this. So we cut to Billy on a golf course. He's playing golf with some of his coworkers and some other people, and the judge is there. And the judge and like the other people kind of like make jokes about the manslaughter charge and like the accident. Like, oh yeah, it's so funny to just like run somebody down in the street and then get off completely scot-free because you have connections. Like, that's great. So we then cut to them in the locker room, and the judge asked this one guy who's a doctor, his name's going to be Mike. The judge is like, can you look at this for me? And he points to this like rash on his chest, and Mike is like, oh, it's probably just your psoriasis coming back from stress. Just use the same ointment that I gave you last time. And the judge is like, okay, and just moves on. So Billy ends up stepping on the scale in the locker room, and he weighs 281. And he's confused. He's like, how the hell did I lose 2 pounds since this morning? And like, he's been eating all day. So eventually we cut to Billy, and he goes up to the judge and he thanks him for taking care of him. He's like, thank you for taking care of that. And the judge is like, yeah, no problem. But something weird happened after I left. Like, I was on my way to lunch, and that guy Lemke was waiting for me, and he touched me in the chest right here, which we just saw. That's where this rash is forming on the judge. And Billy like gets immediately worried because obviously he knows the same shit just happened to him. And he asks the judge, like, did he say anything? And the judge is like, I don't know. He probably did, but I didn't hear him. I was just too worried about catching a disease because, again, he's a Romani person and he assumes that they carry disease and crime with them. So eventually we cut to some time later, and Heidi is telling Billy, like, I really think you need to go off this diet. You're losing too much weight. Like, you are now 256 pounds and you've lost 40 pounds in 2 weeks. Like, that's not normal. And Billy at this point is not really worried about it. And in fact, he just keeps eating because he's like, I'm still losing weight. Like, I can just eat and do whatever. And Heidi points out, like, it could be an early warning sign of cancer. Like, I'm very concerned. I really want you to go to the doctor. And Billy kind of gets upset. He's like, which one do you want? Like, do you want me to be on the diet or do you want me to be fat? Like, which one do you want? Like, you're mad when I'm fat. You're mad that I'm losing weight. And Heidi is like, listen, I talked to Mike, who's the doctor, and he wants you to take a few tests. Like, please just do it for me and do it for Linda. So Billy agrees. And we cut to him with Mike in the doctor's office. And Mike is looking at his results and he tells him that everything is fine. He's like, your blood work is normal. If anything, it's better than mine. Just relax. Your weight is going to stabilize and then you'll probably actually just gain some back. Like it'll go back to normal. Yeah, lie detector determined that was a lie. So we then see Billy go into this local clothing store and the clerk that's in there obviously knows him and he's shocked when he sees Billy because he sees how skinny he is. And like he is very obviously losing weight at this point. Like he's looking a lot thinner. And Billy tells him like, I need a new wardrobe because I can't fit into my old one. So the guy measures him and he tells him like what his pant size in. And Billy is like, no, that can't be right. Like that's different. And he gets on the scale right then and there and he's now 233. So this man is rapidly losing weight. And that night we see Billy at home and he is like shoveling food into his mouth at the dinner table like a fucking rabid animal. And Linda looks worried and she tells him, she's like, I'm worried about you. And he tells her not to worry. Everything's fine. And she ends up like running off crying. Like she goes up to her room crying and Heidi comes out and is like, what the hell just happened? And he's like, well, I lost 6 pounds today, so I have to eat like this. Like at this point, he's getting kind of aggravated and she gets aggravated back and the two of them start to argue. And at this point, Billy, I think this is the first time that Billy actually says out loud to her that he blames her for the accident. Like he doesn't say it in those words, but he kind of hints at the fact that he blames her for the accident for sure. And she gets mad at him and she suggests that Linda go visit her aunt for the next week or so because she can't watch this happening to you. She's stressed out. We can't keep having this. I'm taking her there tomorrow. I don't care what you say. So we cut to Billy sitting at a restaurant and he is just devouring more food. Like again, this dude is eating like an animal at this point. And that doctor, Mike, comes up to him and he's like, hey, like I spoke to a specialist and we've determined like through your blood work that you don't have a parasite, but there is a clinic nearby that I've referred you to and they're expecting you to go there tomorrow. And Billy doesn't want to, but Mike is like, you have to go for Heidi's sake. Like just do it. And at this point, Billy changes the subject and he points out that the judge's wife is sitting here at this restaurant eating alone. And we cut to her and we see her like looking stressed sitting at this table. And he asks Mike, he's like, is she okay? And Mike is like, yeah, I talked to her and the judge. Like apparently the judge's sister got into an accident. And Billy was like, the judge doesn't have a sister. So like he knows that something's up. And again, he looks at her and sees that she looks stressed. And sometime later we see Billy go to the judge's house and his wife is there. And he's like, is the judge here? And his wife says, no, he's in Minnesota, like visiting family. And Billy knows that she's lying. So he calls her out on it and he's like, listen, I've lost 100 pounds. So he's now lost a full 100 pounds. And she says to him, it was the Romani people, wasn't it? Like, did that old man touch you too? And she starts laughing and she invites him in and she hands him this martini that she was holding and says, here, you'll need this. So like, obviously something is up and Billy's confused, but he follows her in and he says, like, where is the judge actually? And his wife tells him he is in Minnesota. I didn't lie about that part, but he's at the Mayo Clinic. And Billy tries to be like, listen, there's no such thing as Romani curses. And his wife asks him, who are you trying to convince? So like, are you trying to convince me or are you trying to convince yourself? Because obviously you know that something is very, very wrong here. And she goes on to tell Billy how he never saw the guy coming, like talking about the judge. And I was too late to warn him. Like I saw that old man coming and then he touched him and he whispered something in his ear. And the judge claims that he didn't hear it, but I heard it. He said one word, lizard. That's what he said. And she tells him that the judge has been growing scales ever since. So that rash on him was not psoriasis. He is physically growing scales. And Billy at this point gets a little worried and he kind of touches his face where where Lemke had touched his face. And the judge's wife goes on and she grows like more and more hysterical as she starts to explain to Billy what happened. And she's like talking about the judge, like his hands were like claws. His eyes were just two bright yellow specks. And she's again like getting hysterical. And she asks him what the old man said to him. And Billy says nothing. He lies. And she ends up like turning on Billy and she starts blaming him for hitting the old woman. And Billy tries to defend himself. And he was like, it was your husband who got me off and he was happy to do it. Like, also, like, he doesn't say this, but I'm saying this. Your husband is a hateful, racist motherfucker. Like, he looked at these people immediately. It was like, oh, they bring like crime and disease. Like, I don't know, man. Maybe you fucking deserved it. But when he brings up how it was your husband who got me off and like he was happy to do it, his wife throws her martini in Billy's face and starts laughing at him and is like, have fun at the clinic. Like, come back in a couple weeks after you've lost another 50 pounds and you tell me if you believe that there's a Romani curse then. And she's like laughing hysterically as she's shouting this, which like she's fucking right. Like, she knows what's up. And Billy at this point, I think, knows too, but is just in denial. So we now cut to that mob guy, Janelli, from the beginning, and he's in a bar and he gets a call from Billy. And Billy asks him if he believes that Romani people can curse people. And Janelli says, well, no, but my mother does. So he turns to his mother and he starts asking her, and he gets back on the phone and tells Billy that my mom says whoever puts on the curse has to take it off. There's nobody else that can do it. So at this point, like, you can tell Billy is starting to believe this and know that he's in some shit here. So we cut to Billy and he's in the car with Heidi and she's driving, and he tells Heidi about the judge's wife and like she thinks that somebody put a Romani curse on me, and tells her about the judge's skin condition. And Heidi like immediately doesn't believe him. Like, she's not listening to him whatsoever about this. And Billy then at this point realizes that Hopley was also in on the cover up because he lied. Like, when he said like, oh yeah, he wasn't speeding, I breathalyzed him, he committed perjury. He lied under oath, and he thinks that Hopley may have been cursed too because he was also involved. And as he's saying this to Heidi, she gets distracted. She like almost hits an oncoming truck, but eventually they pull up to the clinic that Mike set Billy up with. So we see Billy in the clinic. He ends up calling Hopley and he gets no answer. And now the doctors come up to speak to Billy and they're like, we don't know how you continue to lose weight. Like, we can't figure it out. And Billy's like getting a sundae delivered to him. Like, he's still eating like an animal. And the doctors are like, we'll probably need you to stay here for a week or two to run tests. And Billy just like stands up and puts his sundae down and leaves. He's like, yeah, fuck that. Like, he doesn't even say anything. So Billy ends up going to Hopley's house and he starts knocking on the door and there's no answer. But eventually, as he keeps knocking and keeps shouting to him, he hears Hopley's voice telling him to come in. So Billy enters and he finds Hopley. And at first he's sitting behind a desk and his face is in the darkness, but you can kind of already tell that there is something wrong with his face. Like, half of it like swollen, but we can't fully see it yet. And Hopley looks at Billy, who is now very skinny, and he's like, oh, guess you finally found a diet that works. And Billy is like, we don't deserve this. And Hopley is like, are you sure? Like, you ran that woman down, the judge fixed it, and I ran the pack of the Romani people out of the county because he told me to. And Billy is like, I wasn't drunk. And Hopley is like, well, how would I know that? I didn't breathalyze you. Like, I completely lied about it. And at this point, he kind of like turns his face and we can see that he almost has these like boils all over him. And Billy claims that he wasn't drunk and there might have been something else going on though. So Billy like clearly is aware that the reason this happened is because he was distracted driving because his wife was going down on him. But he hasn't admitted that to anybody. And again, he's still like blaming his wife for it as if it doesn't take two to tango, Billy. What the fuck? So Billy is like, I want to find the old guy that put this curse on us and I want you to come with me. And it's at this point that Hopley leans forward and he leans into the light and we see his face and like mostly the right side of it. It looks like he's wearing a mask. Like, his lip is all swollen. He's got like these like ulcers all over his face. He looks gnarly as fuck. And Hopley is like, yeah, sorry, I'm not leaving the house. And he tells Billy, he's like, well, don't be sorry for me because yours is just a little bit slower and I'm not going to go with you to find him. But when you do find him, I want you to kill him and tell him it's from me. And he hands a handgun over to Billy. And Billy kind of starts to panic. He's like, I can't do that. Like, I need him to take the curse off. And Hopley is like, you know he's not going to take it off. Like, are you fucking crazy? Don't be stupid. Take the gun. And Billy at this point, because he's getting more and more frantic, gets up and starts trying to leave. So Billy's like running out at this point, and Hopley is chasing him with the gun as he's refusing to take it. And eventually Billy gets outside of the house and closes the door, and he hears a gunshot as he's walking away. So we understand that Hopley has now killed himself. So eventually Billy gets home, and as he's pulling up to his house, he sees Mike leaving. And you can tell in Billy's face that he's kind of suspicious because he's like, why the fuck would this guy be in my house? And he goes in the house and he like has this vision of his wife making out with Mike. Like, I don't think this actually was a thing that happened, or maybe it was. I don't think he's like having a vision or something, or he's like seeing the past. I think he's like just in his mind convinced himself now that his wife is having an affair, and he's like thinking the worst thing imaginable. Like his mind is going to just like the worst places, assuming that this is true. So Heidi comes down to the kitchen, and Billy tells her that the doctors at the clinic can't help. And he tells her that he went to Hopley and he offered me his gun, and I should have taken it because after I left, I heard a gunshot go off. So I know that he's gone. And Billy at this point is almost kind of laughing, like he's like hopeless at this point, and he tells Heidi that Lemke cursed him too. And Heidi at this point starts yelling because she still is absolutely not believing the fact that there is like a Romani curse that was put on them. Like she is not even entertaining that idea whatsoever. And eventually he gets to the point, Billy does, where he gets so mad that he had picked up like a whole chicken and is eating it, but he throws it and he grabs Heidi and kind of like corners her into a wall and starts yelling at her in her face. And he's like, what else could it be? Like, I am literally being erased. Like, do you not see that? And Heidi still doesn't fucking believe him. And sometime later, we see the two of them out, and Mike sees Billy and comes up to him and is like, Heidi told me that you think there's a curse. And Billy just kind of throws shade at him, and he's like, yeah, she tells you a lot, doesn't she? Because like, again, he's very suspicious of this relationship here. And Mike ends up telling Billy that the judge has skin cancer. Like I talked to him, he has skin cancer, and he tries to get Billy to go back to the clinic. And Billy is like, no, I need to go find the Romani people. Like, I don't give a fuck what you say. And he ends up walking away, and Heidi and Mike kind of just watch him leave, and they think he's crazy. And they even kind of like whisper about how, like, what are we supposed to do? He's crazy. And Mike holds Heidi's hand as he's doing this too. And Billy watches this. So like, you guys are having an affair at this point, and you're not even trying to hide it from this man anymore. So Billy ends up going to this guy to get some information, and he shows him a picture of Lemke. And this guy ends up telling Billy, like, the guy that you ran over was his daughter. And Billy's confused about that. And he's like, yeah, Lemke is 106 years old. Like, that was his daughter. He's got like great-great-grandchildren, and his great-granddaughter is Gina. And the guy ends up telling him, like, I tracked them, and they're probably heading up the Maine coast because they always end up in Bar Harbor at the end of the season. So, like, that's where they're headed. So now Billy has a direction of where to go. And he ends up going home, and he once again sees Mike's car in his fucking driveway. And he goes in, and he slowly enters so he can hear Heidi and Mike talking. And Mike is telling Heidi, like, all you have to do is sign this. It's the best for both of us. And Heidi is like, well, if we take legal action, what's he going to do when he finds out? And Billy at this point interrupts, and he's like, he sees Mike also touching her leg. Like, again, they're making it very obvious that they're fucking around right here. And he's like, what kind of legal action? And Mike tries to explain to Billy, like, the kind that would force you to return to the clinic. And Billy at this point is going to play into them, but he has no intention of returning to this clinic. But he's like, okay, I'll go back. And Heidi looks all happy, but her face drops when she looks at Billy, who looks like he's not smiling at all. And it looks like he knows, like, you guys have been caught. He knows that you're having a fucking affair. So Billy ends up leaving this note for them, or at least for Heidi. And he's like, the old guy knows what I did, but not what you did. And I'm going after him. And if there is anything between you and Mike, end it immediately. So that's like his final parting words to Heidi, basically saying, like, I still hold you responsible for what happened. And like, I'm pretty much going to tell the old man what happened so he fucking curses you too. Like, that's kind of the like what I get from it. Like, he's kind of almost threatening her in that, and then on top of that also threatening her of like, end what is between you and Mike immediately, or else I'm definitely going to tell this guy. But we eventually cut to Billy, and he's in his car, and he's driving up the Maine coast, and he meets with this other guy whose name is Biff. And Biff is like, I'll give you the information you want, but it'll cost $800, and not just for the info, but it's going to cost you so that I don't tell your wife and the doctor. And Billy's confused, but then this guy hands over a missing persons poster that is offering a $5,000 reward, and it's for him. So Heidi and Mike put out a fucking missing persons poster for him as if they didn't know where he was going. But Billy ultimately agrees to pay this guy so he can get the info on where the Romani people are going. And he continues to follow them once he gets this information. And he's in this diner one day, and he sees a flyer for the Gypsy Fair again. So he's like, gotcha. Like, now I know where you guys are. And we cut to this fair, and we see Gina is there along with Lemke, and he decides to confront them. He approaches the two of them, and Lemke kind of just looks at Billy and is like, next week you'll weigh 143 pounds. And Gina starts laughing and Lemke starts laughing and Gina grabs at these dolls. And one of these dolls is the judge with his skin all fucked up. Like he looks like a fucking lizard. It's all cracked and shit. And then another one is of the cop with the ulcers on his face. And then the third doll is Billy and he's like all gaunt and he looks like a corpse. And Gina picks up this little Billy doll and she throws it at him. And she chases Billy out of the fair with a slingshot as Lemke watches and laughs. And as Billy is running, suddenly the judge pulls up in a car and his skin again like is all cracked and all dry and all he looks like a fucking lizard or like a fucking alligator or something. And as he's going to get in the car, Gina shoots out the window, so he gets in and they drive away. And the judge is like, we're gonna get that bastard. And he obviously drops the slur word. He's like, we're gonna get that bastard. And they drive full speed and they start driving towards a truck. And in the truck we see that the person driving it is Lemke and he's driving towards them. So the car swerves and the truck hits them and like drags them to this oncoming school bus. And as it hits the school bus, Billy wakes up. It was just a dream, which I think this sequence is like so fucking silly personally. Like obviously it was saved by the fact that it was a nightmare. So like you can kind of get away with anything when you show that it was just a dream, but I still think this is so silly. Like the fact that like Lemke is the one driving the truck and the fucking judge is all fucked up. I don't know. I just think it's very corny personally. So Billy wakes up in a cold sweat and he ends up calling the judge, or at least talks to his wife and asks to speak with the judge. And his wife tells him that he drove his car into a gas truck yesterday. And she kind of starts laughing. Like it seems like she's also been driven insane by this whole thing. And she's like, he did always want to be cremated. So like he just did it himself. So now Hopley has killed himself and the judge has killed himself as well. And Billy eventually pulls up to the fairground and he goes into this bar and he starts showing people this picture of Lemke asking, like, have you seen this guy around here? Now, eventually he runs into this one guy who recognizes the photo and immediately looks terrified. And he's like, I knew that guy was around here. Like I knew I had seen him and I hadn't seen him in 10, maybe 20 years, but I knew it was him last night when he came up to me and he said, where's that pretty wife of yours? And he said, it doesn't matter. Like you'll be seeing her soon. And then he looks at Billy and he's like, my wife has been dead for 5 years and somehow he knew. And like, that was a threat. So Billy asks him which way they went. And the guy is like, well, I didn't see them, but I heard them. And he directs them to where they said that they were going. So Billy sets out as this guy tells him to be careful because this guy knows what they're dealing with here. And eventually Billy calls Linda from a payphone and Linda tells him like mom's upset and she's downstairs with Mike. He's been here a lot. So like obviously Heidi hasn't taken his letter seriously. Like if there's something with you and Mike, end it, because now Linda is fucking outing the fact that he's still been there all the time. So eventually Heidi gets on the phone and is like, I've been talking to Mike, which like, girl, you already know that he's fucking mad and that he fucking is clocked your affair that you're most likely having. Like, why are you still bringing this up? And like, this shit pisses me off. What the fuck does Mike have to do with anything? Like, is this not a fucking family matter? Like obviously Mike's a doctor, but why is he so heavily involved? Like get the fuck away. Like I would be pissed off if I was Billy too. And Billy is so pissed at this point. He takes the phone and he slams it down and just like kind of keeps slamming it down on the receiver. So obviously he hangs up. And as he's doing this, he's repeating to himself, it's all your fault. It's all your fault. So again, like I think he just hates his wife, and this is just another excuse to fucking hate his wife. He blames her for what's happening to him. So we cut to that night, and Billy wanders into this field where he finds the caravan. He finds all the cars and all the trucks, and he sees all the Romani people, and he starts walking through the crowd, and they all start to see him, and they stop and pause and watch him as he walks by, and they all stare at him angrily, and eventually they get to Gina, and she starts like shaming him for killing her mother, or her grandmother, whichever one. And she calls him a demon and she spits at him and she swears at him and she like curses him in a different language. And Lemke comes up to him and tells him to leave. And Billy tries to kind of justify his actions. He's like, I'm sorry. Like I couldn't see your daughter that night. And Lemke is like, yeah, you never see us. And at this point he starts referring to Billy as the white man from town. And he's like, yeah, like the white man from town, like you never see us. And doing this to me is not going to bring her back. Like Hopley and the judge are dead and she's still not back. And Lemke obviously is aware of this, but he's like, justice isn't about bringing her back. It's not about bringing back the dead. They kept you safe, those two did. And I made sure that something happened to them. And that's what we call gypsy justice. So he refers to himself as that word. So he says, that's what we call justice. And Billy is like, take your fucking curse off me. Like at this point, him trying to get through to him is not working. So he starts getting aggressive. He's like, take the fucking curse off me. And Lemke refuses. And at this point, when anger doesn't work, Billy tries begging, and he gets down on his knees and he begs for forgiveness, and he apologizes. He admits that it was his fault, which he's able to admit to Lemke, but like not to himself or to his own wife. He still blames her. But Lemke at this point tells him, leave, or I'm going to make it so much worse that you'll think I blessed you the first time. Like, get the fuck out of here. And at this point, Billy goes back to anger, and he's like, I'll go, but not before I curse you and everyone here. And it's going to be the curse of the white man from town. And Lemke and everybody start laughing at him. And Billy is like, you laugh now, but you won't be when you see what I can do. Take the curse off while you still can. And as he's like mid-sentence, Gina just gets fed up, and she's had enough of this. And she takes this slingshot and she aims it right at him and shoots it through his hand. And it literally causes this open hole directly through his hand, whatever she shot. And Billy drops to his knees because he obviously is in pain. And he starts dripping blood on the ground. And he actually uses this. He's like, blood, like the curse is now on you. And Lemke at this point looks a little scared. Like he does get a little bit intimidated by that. You can tell that that worked. So we cut to Billy back in his hotel. He's bleeding. He's shaking. Like there's blood everywhere. Like this thing fucked him up. And he ends up calling Janelli. And he's like, hey, remember that time that you told me you owed me a favor? Like this is it. I'm cashing in on that. Like I need a doctor. And Janelli tells him that he'll have somebody to him by morning. And sure enough, we cut to the next morning and this doctor shows up and he looks at his hand. And again, there's a straight hole through it. And he gives him these pills and he wraps his hand and he tells him to expect a visitor tomorrow. So the next day, Janelli shows up and Billy weighs himself. And at this point, he is like gaunt. He looks like a fucking corpse at this point. He's like, his skin is gray and he gets on the scale and he's under 130. And in the book, the lowest weight that he gets to is about 120. So this is pretty fitting. And the actual actor in real life was about 160 when he filmed this role. He did lose like a bunch of weight for it. I guess not necessarily a bunch of weight. He lost 20 pounds, but either way, he got down to 160, which like I feel like is pretty light for a man. At this point, Janelli informs Billy that he has been committed to a mental institution in absentia by his bitch ass wife and that fucking guy Mike. And Billy damns Mike and Heidi out loud, like he says that. And he tells Janelli that I didn't want to believe it, but I know that the two of them are having an affair, and like that's partially why I think they're doing this. And Billy looks in the mirror and he says out loud, like, I'm going to get you for this, Heidi. So as if he didn't already fucking hate his wife, he fucking hates his wife now. So we cut to that night and we see Janelli and Billy drive to the camp where Billy was at the night before. And Janelli assures him, like, I'm not going to hurt anybody, because Billy asks him, like, you're not going to hurt anybody, are you? And Janelli says, no, but if you want me to help you, I'm going to need you to not ask me that question again. And Janelli gets out of the car, and this is really sad. Sorry, just animal cruelty involved right here. Janelli ends up going to these dog cages and he feeds them all poison treats. So all the dogs die. We don't see them die. We just see him like feed them the treats, and like he mentions that they're like cyanide or something. And he leaves a sign up on the cages that says, white man from town says take it off, talking about like take the curse off. And Janelli and Billy's like so weak at this point, he like almost can't even get out of the car, it seems. But Janelli ends up driving him to a gas station and they find some random dude parked there. And he says that his name is Frank, and Janelli pays him. He's like, here, I'm going to give you this money. If you see these Romani people leaving this camp or this caravan, like I want you to call me. So sure enough, the next day, Janelli gets a call from this guy and he tells him that the Romani people are up at a farm, like up the street. That's where they went. And he hangs up after he's given him this information, and he goes to drop his keys and he goes down, but he ends up at somebody's feet. And when he looks up, it's Gina and her husband standing over him. And we cut to black. But of course we understand it's not about to end well for this guy. So Janelli ends up getting these packages delivered to him. And when he opens them, it's a bunch of like fucking assault rifles and guns, which I would say, like, how the fuck do you get that delivered in the mail? But at the same time, this is America. So like I am, as an American, not shocked at all. That's probably accurate. But as he's opening this, Billy looks out and he sees something written on the car. And when he approaches it, he sees that on the car is written white man from town. And when he approaches the car closer, he sees that this guy Frank is dead and mutilated in the front seat. And there's like a chicken head like sticking out of his mouth. It's actually fucking gross. And Janelli sees this as well. So of course they know like this is a message. Like this is revenge for killing the dogs, and it's also a message. So That night, Janelli loads up his gun and Billy tries to tell him, like, this is getting out of hand, which, like, Billy, what did you expect? Like, they're actively trying to kill you. Like, why else would you call this fucking mobster if you didn't want this to happen? But Janelli is like, no, it's been out of hand since that guy touched you, and like they can't get away with this stuff. And Billy like tries to tell him like, please don't do this, but Janelli just doesn't listen to him and he leaves. And he ends up going to the camp and they're all there. And Janelli shows up and he comes up behind Gina's husband and knocks him out. And he like binds and gags him. And he hides him behind this like little wall. And he starts shooting at the caravan. So he doesn't shoot anybody directly, but he like starts shooting at the caravans. He's blowing tires out. He's blowing up cars. And the Romani people start shooting back at him. And it's just utter chaos at this point. And Janelli eventually picks up the husband, who's like on the ground again, tied up and gagged. And he throws him back at everybody as they're all shooting. So they end up shooting this guy. And they eventually stop when they realize who they're shooting at. But it's too late at this point. He drops dead. And Gina runs up to him screaming. And she sees a sign on him, on his now dead body, that says, white man from town says take it off. So again, end this fucking curse or this shit is going to continue. So we cut to the next day at the campground still. It's daytime now. And there's cops there because obviously like they are aware of the shootout, and Janelli goes up to Gina and he acts as if he's an FBI agent because Gina has not seen him yet. And he shows this picture of Billy and he's like, do you recognize this man? And Gina's like, yes, like he killed my mom and now he's killed my husband. And is like, well, we don't think he actually committed this act, but we do think that he hired somebody to make the attack. And we have him in custody. Like, are you willing to come and identify him? And Gina is like, yes. Like, she proudly comes because she obviously hates this man. So we cut to Billy, once again, looking very much like a corpse. And he sees Janelli showing up back to where he is with Gina, and he brings her into this barn, and we cut in there, and Janelli looks at Gina, and who's confused. She's like, I thought we were going to see this guy in custody. And Janelli holds up a photo, and it's his own mugshot. And he's like, here's a photo of the man that we think attacked your camp. So basically, like, it was me, bitch. And Gina goes to run, but he pushes her down, and he pulls out this jar of liquid, and he says, acid, bitch. And he throws it in her face. And she starts screaming, and she falls, and he gets on top of her and, like, threatens to kill her. And he laughs because he's like, that wasn't acid. That was just a bunch of soda. So like now he's almost taunting her, and she like tries to hit him, but he throws her into a ladder and ends up like knocking her down. And at this point Billy comes in, and he still asks him not to do this, even though like this woman has like literally cursed you or been part of cursing you, shot directly through your hand with her fucking slingshot. But Janelli now is holding her at gunpoint, and Janelli is like, listen, this time you live just because he asked, but next time you're dead. And Gina looks at them and is like, fuck you both. And she spits in Janelli's face, and he once again throws her to the ground, and he pulls out another jar, and he's like, this one is the real deal. And he spills a little bit on the floor, and sure enough, this one is actually acid. And he holds it over her head, and he ends up putting it on her forehead and balances it there. And he takes his hand away, and he's like, you better hold very still, and you also better tell Lemke to meet me at the lighthouse in 2 hours. So Janelli takes Billy, and the two of them walk out, and we see Gina like very slowly like put her hands up because she's obviously balancing literal acid on her head, and she manages to grab the jar and she throws it, and she chases after the car as they're driving away, and she's like, your friend is a pig and he will die thin, but you will die first. She's screaming this to them as they're driving away. But eventually Janelli pulls up to the lighthouse with Billy, who again is just like so weak and gaunt and fucking frail right now, and he tells Billy like he's gonna meet you here, and Billy thanks Janelli for what he's done. So he gets out of the car and he slowly walks over to this bench where he sits down, and he looks dead. Like he literally looks dead, and eventually he falls asleep. So he really looks dead. But sometime later he's woken up by Lemke, who says, your dreams smell bad to me, which like what a fucking insult. Jesus Christ. I mean, I would rather somebody like call me like fat and ugly than say like your dreams smell bad to me. I don't know why. For some reason that's like terrifying, and also like, what does that mean? Like, am I in danger? Lemke sits down next to him, and he pulls out this pie, and he's like, I don't want to, but I gotta do this so that your crazy friend doesn't hurt Gina. So like he knows that Janelli means fucking business, and he will absolutely kill Gina because he's insane. And he tells Billy, like, if you want to get rid of the curse, you have to give give it to this pie. You have to give the curse to this pie. And he takes Billy's hand that's already wounded and he cuts it open so that he bleeds. And Billy starts bleeding onto the pie. And Lemke tells him, now that the curse is in the pie, you have to give this pie to somebody else. And he like recites some chant or something over the pie as Billy is bleeding into it, and the pie starts to like pulsate, and Lemke tells him, you'll gain weight quick, but somebody has to eat the pie very soon, and everybody else who eats it will die quick and bad. And he asks Billy if he has somebody, and Billy just looks angry and he says, yes, I do have somebody. And Lemke tells Billy as he's walking away, he looks back and he's like, eat the pie yourself, like die with some fucking dignity, you'll die quick and it'll at least be clean. And Billy just looks at him and tells him like, go away, like our business is done here. But like even this guy, Lemke, has the fucking morals to be like, you're the one that got yourself into this situation, just eat the pie. Like, it's your fucking fault. So Lemke leaves and leaves Billy with this cursed pie. And Billy ends up calling Linda and tells her, like, I'm going to be just fine. I'm doing better. And he looks more normal now. Like, he's instantly gained back weight. And he tells her, I'm coming home, but I want it to be a surprise. So I want you to go stay at your aunt's house because I need to talk to your mom. And Linda agrees with this. She's like, okay, fine. So Heidi ends up taking the phone and he tells her, like, I'll see you in a couple days. I'm going to be on my way back. So a couple days go by and Billy gets home and he brings the pie inside and he looks at it as it like pulsates and he puts it down on the counter and it stops. But Billy goes to wake up Heidi and she hugs him and he's all happy and he tells her like, I brought you a present. And Heidi looks at him and like swears that there's nothing between her and Mike. And he's just like, yep, sure. And he tells her, I'm going to bed, but I want you to go check out what I brought you. And Heidi goes in the kitchen and sees that it's a pie and it's strawberry, so it's her favorite, and she stays in the kitchen and he goes to go upstairs and under his breath he says, getting even's what it's all about, you bitch. So he also like swears at her again under his breath so she doesn't hear it, and he goes upstairs. And like, this is so heartless to me that he doesn't even give a fuck, because the next morning Billy wakes up and he sees that Heidi is lying next to him, but she is covered by the blankets, and when he pulls down the covers, she's a fucking corpse, and she is like a juicy corpse. Like, she's got like liquid coming from her eyes and shit. Like, she looks gnarly as fuck. Like, whoever did the effects on this one, honestly, shout out, because I think she looks fucking gross. And Billy looks at her and just like smiles and he's like, yep, you tried it, like talking about the pie. And he ends up like, I don't know why the fuck he does this. It's very strange to me, but he like kisses her wet, dead face. And then he like licks the strawberry pie. Like, she has like strawberry on her mouth and he like licks it. And he's like, oh, it's diet food, which like, wouldn't this mean that you ate the pie and you just gave the curse back to yourself? Like, why the fuck would you do that? But Billy ends up going downstairs and he's all like happy and victorious until he sees that Linda's bags are on a chair. And he goes into the kitchen and he sees that there are 2 plates in the sink. And Billy looks in the fridge and he sees that there are multiple slices gone from the pie. And Linda runs in at this point and hugs him and tells him, I'm sorry I didn't stay out with my aunt, but I had to talk to mom. Like, we were having some issues, but we worked everything out. And I also just had a piece of your pie for breakfast and it was delicious. Okay, gotta go. And she runs out to go to school. And at this point, Billy cries and he literally says to himself, like, what have I done? And he ends up grabbing the pie and he grabs a fork ready to eat it, because he's like, at this point, he's just also killed his daughter and like, he can't live with that. But before he is able to put the pie in his mouth, the doorbell rings and he goes to the door. And when he answers it, it's Mike. And Mike is shocked to see Billy here. He's like, oh, Billy, like, what are you doing here? And Billy calls him out. He's like, kind of early for a house call, isn't it? Like, why else would you be coming to this house after my daughter left for school and when you think my husband's gone, if it's not to fucking continue your affair with me? Like, obviously that's what you're doing here. And Mike tries to tell him, like, it's not what you think. Heidi was upset. I stopped by to check on her. Like, oh, sure you did, you fucking loser. And Billy's like, you know what? I was just going to have some of this pie and I think that you should come in and join me. And Mike is like, oh, okay, that sounds nice. And he comes in the door, and as he walks past Billy, he doesn't hear him say this, but Billy looks at the camera and he says, white doctor from town, and he closes the door. And the movie ends. So this movie was written and directed by Tom Holland, who probably most famously directed the first Child's Play. And there was a lot of studio interference, according to him, with this movie, because originally in his screenplay, the ending was true to the novel and they made him change it, which I think is probably the biggest reason, or one of the bigger reasons, why this movie like did not resonate with audiences, or like didn't really do well. But it's also because like when they first showed the original ending to test audiences, they didn't like it. So that's part of why the studio made him change it. And I really just wonder how they executed it in the original, because in the book, again, like when I read that ending, I like my like heart dropped. Like I literally like my heart dropped into my fucking stomach and I was like, holy fuck. Because in the book, he still blames Heidi for being in the situation that he's in. And I think like that's like the main theme of this movie is like fucking accountability, brother. Like fucking take responsibility for your actions and what you did and just live with the consequences. But he can't do that. So he continues to blame Heidi. In the book, however, Heidi does not have the relationship with Mike. Like there is not the affair going on. So I guess in the movie, I can understand why they added that, because it makes his anger more intense. Because I will say in the book, like that just seems like a silly reason to want to kill your wife. Like she was fucking like jerking you off in the car and you hit somebody, so she deserves to die because of that. Like I think that's a little bit silly. But in this, I get it. Like you have the added layer of her now having an affair, so that kind of fuels your anger towards her, and that's why you do what you do. So in the book, the reason that I think the ending is so devastating is because he brings home the pie and it's the same thing. And he intends on feeding it to Heidi because he still hates his wife. He still blames her for the whole thing. But instead of her eating the pie, he finds that just Linda has eaten the pie, which I think that's why that's so devastating, is because like, sure, you got in the movie, like Heidi did it. Like it is what it is. That's what you wanted. Great. But then you also find out that Linda ate it. I think there is just something so much more like a punch to the gut that your daughter ate it instead of the person that you wanted to eat it. So like you didn't succeed at all. Like now your daughter's dying. Like your daughter is about to die. And I think that's just a lot more hard hitting than both of them eating the pie. And originally in the movie, they actually filmed a sequence of what was going to happen to Linda and like how she died, but they ended up thinking it was like too gory and they cut it out. I would have liked to see that, honestly, just like out of curiosity. I don't think it necessarily had to be in the movie, but I would like to see it as a deleted scene, but I don't think it exists anymore. But yeah, so when I read this book, I think it was actually before I had seen this movie full through, and I was not expecting that. Like, I was not expecting that they were going to kill off the teenage daughter in the very end. And like, again, you don't see her die, but you know that she is now bound to die, and Billy ends up taking a slice of pie, preparing to eat it for himself, because obviously he's not going to be able to live with the fact that he killed his daughter. In the book, they also go way more into depth about what happens to Janelli, because it turns out Gina does hunt him down and she does kill him in the book. So I don't think it was necessary to include that in the movie, but I think I would have liked to see it, just to kind of make that story come full circle. And I feel like from what I remember, like that shootout scene with him in the caravan is also like a lot more intense and intricate and more detailed in the book, and like actually has you on the edge of your seat. Whereas in the movie, I feel like it's pretty quick. Something they were going to do in this movie that they ended up taking out, which I wish that they did, is they were going to make the FX look a lot more like gruesome and gnarly. Like when he lost all that weight, they were going to have like his cheeks way more gaunt and like skin like literally dangling off of his face, but they thought it was like too gruesome and too gory for the movie, so they ended up changing it, which I think that would have been cool to see. Like I think it would have been realistic to see too, like if this man lost this weight so rapidly, like what would have happened to his body. I think it would have been cool. So I wish they left that in, but I mean, that's Thinner. This is a case where I do find the book to be significantly better than the movie. Like again, it's just way more intense, and like that ending is truly fucking devastating, whereas this one is just like, I mean, yes, he still fed it to his daughter, and that is devastating, but I feel like that part is overshadowed by the affair, because then Mike comes in and it's like, oh, now I'm going to kill you too. It's like, how many people are you going to take out with this fucking pie? Like, I actually like the simplicity of just like the only person that ate it is the one person you didn't want to eat it, and the one person that didn't deserve it, and it was your daughter. Like I think that's so much more devastating than what they did. So I really wonder why test audiences didn't like that. Maybe they just feel like because of the added layer of the affair, like it just they deserve to die, I guess, like Mike and Heidi did, and that's why they ended up adding both of them in. I don't know, but I think we would have gotten a different movie, and I think maybe like the ratings would have been better. I don't know, maybe it still would have been bad, guys. It's not a great movie. Like I'm very much willing to say that. I'm the first person to say that, but the book is great. So I highly recommend reading Thinner. I really do enjoy the book. But that wraps up our Stephen King month, guys. So thank you for going through this month with me. I had such a blast. I just really love so many Stephen King adaptations. And again, there's still so many more to do. So we're going to have to do the same thing. Now, we're going into October, so of course we're going to do Halloween month. And we actually have 10 episodes in October because the way that it falls, like the first day of the month is a Wednesday, the last day of the month is a Friday, which is Halloween. So you guys get 10 episodes. That's a fucking lot. So here's the rundown. On Wednesday, October 1st, we're going to do Dark Harvest, which I think is an incredibly underrated Halloween movie and honestly one of my favorite Halloween movies to watch during the season. I don't know why this movie doesn't get more attention, but I have to start the month off with it because I fucking love it. And then on Friday, we're going to do Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, which is very near and dear to my heart because if you're like me, you read those books as a kid. So I actually really had a blast when that movie came out. And then on Wednesday the 8th, we're going to do Ghost Watch, which is probably one of the greatest mockumentaries ever made. And like it's genuinely convincing that it's real. And then that Friday, we're going to do Cry Wolf. Some of these movies don't all take place during Halloween, but there are like Halloween segments in them. And they're also movies that I really like. So I want to add them in. And then on Wednesday, we're going to do Tales of Halloween, which is an anthology. On that Friday, we're going to do May, which is another one that has like a portion that involves Halloween. It's not all Halloween, but again, I love that movie. And the same thing goes for that Wednesday. We're going to cover Donnie Darko, which I fucking love Donnie Darko. And again, not all in Halloween, but it culminates to like a Halloween party. So it fits and there's no rules here, whatever. And then that Friday, we're going to do Night of the Demons. And then Wednesday, we're going to do All Hallows Eve. And then Friday, Halloween itself is going to be Late Night with the Devil. And that is the lineup for the month. So we got a busy month going in. But I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you haven't yet given me a 5-star rating on Spotify, Apple, wherever you're listening to me, it would be super helpful, helps push me out into the algorithm and find other people to join our lovely little community we have growing here. So till next time, you guys know where to find me. It's horror_chronicles on TikTok and Instagram. I post every day so you can keep up with me there. And until next time, watch more horror movies and stay spooky, my friends.